The harsh slap of wind against the clapboard walls of her small homestead reminded Nora Reynolds that winter in Colorado Territory, 1876, was no place for a widow with a child and empty cupboards. Her trembling fingers traced the length of her auburn hair, once her pride, now her last hope for survival. She had nothing else to trade. Nora bundled her 4-year-old daughter, Mary, in their only remaining blanket. "Stay warm, my love. Mama will be back with bread soon." She pressed a kiss to the child's forehead, hot with fever, and fought back tears. The 7-mile walk to Silverdale was torturous. Snow crunched beneath her worn boots, and the bitter January wind cut through her threadbare shawl. 6 months had passed since influenza took her husband, Thomas. 6 months of struggling, selling everything they owned piece by piece, watching their supplies dwindle until nothing remained but the roof over their heads. By the time Nora reached Silverdale, her cheeks were raw from cold and tears. She forced herself to stand tall as she pushed open the door to Wilson's general store, Mrs. Reynolds. Mr. Wilson nodded from behind the counter, his expression a mixture of pity and wariness. Too many times she'd asked for credit. Too many times he'd refused. "Mr. Wilson." Nora's voice shook as she approached. "I need bread and medicine. My Mary's fever hasn't broken for 3 days." The shopkeeper sighed. "Mrs. Reynolds, you know I can't. I can pay this time." She pulled the thick braid over her shoulder, nearly 3 feet of rich auburn hair. "I'm told there are wig makers who pay for hair. This should be worth something." Mr. Wilson's face fell. "Oh, Mrs. Reynolds, how much for the bread, Wilson?" A deep voice from the back of the store interrupted them. Nora turned to see a tall man step forward from between the shelves. His face was partially hidden beneath the brim of a wide hat, but she could make out a strong jaw dusted with stubble and eyes the color of a summer storm. "2 loaves would be 40 cents, Mr. Durand," Wilson replied. The stranger Durand stepped closer, and Nora noticed the worn leather of his duster, the revolver holstered at his hip, the spurs that jangled softly with each step. A cowboy, or perhaps a rancher. "And the medicine?" the stranger asked. $1.20 for fever powder." The man nodded, reaching into his pocket. "Give the lady what she needs." He placed several coins on the counter. "And add flour, sugar, coffee, and some of that dried beef." Nora stiffened. "I don't accept charity, sir." His eyes met hers, and something in his gaze made her heart stutter. "It's not charity, madam. Consider it an advance." "An advance on what?" she challenged. "I need a cook at my ranch through the winter. My last one left to strike gold in the mountains." He extended a gloved hand. "Vincent Durand. My place is 5 miles west of here." Nora hesitated, clutching her braid protectively. "I have a child, Mr. Durand." "I heard." His voice softened. "Keep your hair, Mrs. Reynolds. I'll feed you both." Later, as Vincent loaded the supplies into his wagon, Nora felt dizzy with relief and uncertainty. "I can start once my daughter recovers." "You'll start by getting that child well," he said firmly. "I'll take you home now. Tomorrow I'll return with more supplies." The ride back to her homestead was quiet. Nora studied Vincent's profile against the setting sun. He was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps 30, with a face weathered by sun and wind but handsome in its ruggedness. "Why are you helping us?" she finally asked. Vincent was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "My mother was widowed when I was 6, he finally said. "No one helped her. She cut her hair 3 times before she couldn't anymore." His hands tightened on the reins. "No woman should have to sell herself piece by piece to survive." When they reached her homestead, Vincent carried in the supplies while Nora rushed to Mary's bedside. The child's forehead still burned with fever. "Here," Vincent said, measuring out the fever powder into a cup of water. My mother swore by adding honey to make it palatable. For 3 days, Vincent came each morning and evening, bringing fresh supplies and helping tend to Mary. On the 4th day, the fever broke. "Thank you," Nora whispered, watching her daughter sleep peacefully for the first time in a week. "I don't know how I'll repay you." "You'll cook for me and my men as agreed," Vincent said simply. "Once the little one is strong enough to travel, I'll come fetch you both." 2 weeks later, Nora and Mary moved into the small cabin behind the main house of the Durand ranch. The work was hard cooking for Vincent and his 5 ranch hands, tending the vegetable garden, mending clothes, but the security of regular meals and a warm place to sleep made it worthwhile. Mary thrived in the ranch environment, following Vincent around like a shadow whenever he was near the house. To Nora's surprise, the quiet rancher showed infinite patience with the child's endless questions. "Mr. Vincent, why do cows have 4 stomachs?" Mary would ask, perched on the corral fence. "So they can eat grass that people can't digest," he'd answer seriously, as though speaking to an equal. As winter melted into spring, Nora found herself watching Vincent when he didn't notice. The way his face transformed when he smiled, a rare but treasured sight. The gentleness of his hands when treating an injured calf. The respect his men showed him, not from fear but from genuine admiration. One evening in early April, Nora was kneading bread dough when Vincent entered the kitchen, his hair damp from washing up after a day's work. "Smells good in here," he said, pouring himself a cup of coffee. "Beef stew," she replied. "Should be ready soon." Vincent nodded, leaning against the counter. "The men will be heading into town tomorrow. Thought you and Mary might like to go too, get some things you need." Nora looked up, flour dusting her cheeks. "That's kind of you." "It's not kindness, you've earned your pay." He slid an envelope across the counter. "Been meaning to give you this. Your wages for these past months." Nora stared at the envelope. She hadn't expected payment beyond room and board. "Vincent, you work hard," he interrupted. "Harder than any cook we've had. The men are getting fat on your cooking." The corner of his mouth twitched in what might have been a smile. Their fingers brushed as she took the envelope, and Nora felt a jolt of warmth race up her arm. Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither moved. The spell broke when Mary burst through the door, clutching wildflowers in her small fist. "Mama, Mr. Vincent, look what I found." That night, after Mary was asleep, Nora counted the money with trembling hands. It was more than fair wages. It was enough to make a real start, perhaps even repair her homestead. But the thought of leaving the ranch, of leaving Vincent, made her chest ache in a way she hadn't expected. In town the next day, Nora bought fabric for new dresses, sturdy boots for Mary, and seeds for planting. While Mary was being fitted for the boots, Nora slipped into the barber shop. "Mrs. Reynolds," Mr. Peterson, the barber, greeted her. "What can I do for you?" "How much would you give me for my hair?" she asked quietly. Peterson's eyes widened. "That magnificent mane. I could offer $5, which is generous, but why would you want to?" "Just wondering," Nora said quickly. "Thank you." As she stepped outside, she nearly collided with Vincent. "Nora," he said, steadying her with a hand on her elbow. "Everything all right?" She nodded, avoiding his eyes. "Just making inquiries." His expression darkened. "About selling your hair. It's mine to sell if I choose," she said defensively. Vincent's jaw tightened. "I thought we were past that." "The agreement was for the winter," she reminded him. "Spring is here." Before he could respond, Mary came running up with her new boots proudly displayed. The conversation ended, but the tension lingered. That evening, as Nora tucked Mary into bed in their cabin, the child asked, "Are we leaving, Mama?" Nora sighed, smoothing her daughter's hair. "I don't know, sweetheart. I don't want to leave Mr. Vincent," Mary said with a child's directness. "He needs us." "Does he now?" Nora smiled. "And what makes you think that?" Mary yawned. "Because he looks sad when you're not looking, like Papa used to look at your picture when he was away." Nora's heart stuttered. "Go to sleep, little one." The next morning, Vincent was gone before dawn. One of the ranch hands informed her that the boss had ridden to a neighboring ranch to negotiate a cattle sale and wouldn't be back for several days. 3 days passed with no sign of Vincent. Nora told herself it was for the best. Distance would clear her head, help her decide what to do next. But each night, she found herself standing on the porch of their cabin, scanning the horizon for a lone rider. On the 4th day, a spring storm blew in, bringing driving rain and howling wind. As Nora served dinner to the ranch hands in the main house, the door burst open and Vincent stumbled in, drenched and mud-splattered. "Boss," Hank, the foreman, jumped up. "We weren't expecting you back in this weather." Vincent shrugged off his sodden coat. "Deal's done. No sense waiting out the storm there when I could be home." His eyes found Nora's across the room, and something unspoken passed between them. Later, after the men had gone to the bunkhouse and Nora had put Mary to bed, she returned to the main house with a fresh pot of coffee. She found Vincent sitting at the kitchen table staring into the fire. "You'll catch your death if you don't get warm," she said, pouring him coffee. He accepted the cup with a nod of thanks. "Been through worse." Nora hesitated, then sat across from him. "Vincent, about the other day, I'm sorry," he interrupted. "Had no right to question your decisions." "No, you didn't," she agreed softly, "but I appreciate your concern." Vincent ran a hand through his damp hair. "Are you planning to leave?" The directness of the question caught her off guard. I don't know. Mary loves it here and the work is good, but..." "But what?" "But this isn't our home," she said carefully. "We have a homestead, and eventually I need to decide whether to work it or sell it." Vincent was quiet for a long moment. "What if you had a third option?" Nora's heart began to race. "What kind of option?" "Stay," he said simply. "Not as a cook, as..." He trailed off, seeming to struggle for words. "As what, Vincent?" she pressed, hardly daring to breathe. He met her eyes, and the vulnerability there made her throat tight. "As my wife, if you'd have me." The world seemed to stop. "Your wife," she whispered. "I know it's sudden," he said quickly. "And I know you're still grieving Thomas. But these past months, watching you with Mary, seeing your strength and determination, I've never met a woman like you, Nora." Tears pricked her eyes. "You barely know me." "I know enough," he said firmly. "I know you'd cut your hair to feed your child. I know you work from sunrise to sunset without complaint. I know your laugh makes my day brighter, and when you're not near, I find myself inventing reasons to be where you are." A tear slipped down Nora's cheek. I never imagined you might feel this way." Vincent reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "Neither did I. But here we are." Nora looked down at their joined hands. "I need time, Vincent. This is unexpected," he nodded, withdrawing his hand. "Take all the time you need. My feelings won't change." That night Nora lay awake, her mind racing. Vincent wanted to marry her. The thought sent a flush of warmth through her body, followed immediately by guilt. Thomas had been gone less than a year. Was it disrespectful to his memory to consider remarrying so soon? And yet, life on the frontier was harsh and unforgiving. Thomas himself had once told her, "If something happens to me, don't mourn too long. Find someone good for you and Mary." Was Vincent that someone? He was kind, hardworking, respected. He treated Mary with genuine affection. And when he looked at Nora, she felt seen in a way she hadn't since Thomas's death, not as a widow to be pitied, but as a woman of value. In the morning, Nora dressed with care, braiding her long hair and pinning it up. Mary watched curiously. "You look pretty, Mama," she said. "Are we going somewhere special?" Nora smiled. "Not today, sweetheart, but I need to talk to Mr. Vincent. Will you be good and stay with Mrs. Garcia in the kitchen for a while?" Mary nodded solemnly. "Are you going to tell him we're staying?" Nora's breath caught. "Why do you think that?" "Because you smile different when he's around," Mary said with a child's simple perception. "Like you used to smile at Papa." Throat tight, Nora pulled her daughter into a hug. "You are too clever for your own good, Miss Mary Reynolds." She found Vincent in the barn, checking a horse's injured leg. He straightened when he saw her, uncertainty flashing across his face. "Nora, Vincent." She clasped her hands to stop them from trembling. "I've been thinking about your proposal," he nodded, waiting. "I need to know something first," she said carefully. "Is this about duty? Do you feel responsible for us because of how we met?" Vincent's eyes widened. "Is that what you think?" "It's what I need to be sure about," she answered honestly. "You met me at my lowest point. I don't want your pity." "Pity?" He stepped closer, his voice low and intense. "Nora, what I feel for you is the furthest thing from pity." "Then what is it?" she challenged. Instead of answering with words, Vincent closed the distance between them. His hand gently cradled her face, giving her every opportunity to step away. When she didn't, he lowered his mouth to hers. The kiss was tentative at first, a question rather than a demand. But when Nora's hands moved to his chest, not to push him away but to steady herself, the kiss deepened. Heat bloomed between them, a living thing that had been building for months. When they finally parted, both breathing heavily, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. "That's what it is," he murmured. "That's what I feel." Nora's heart pounded against her ribs. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "Of what?" "Of losing again. Of letting Mary get attached and then—" She couldn't finish the thought. Vincent pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "I can't promise nothing will ever happen to me, Nora, but I can promise to love you and Mary with everything I have for however long I'm given." Tears welled in her eyes. "I think I'm falling in love with you, Vincent Durand." His smile transformed his face. "I know I'm in love with you, Nora Reynolds." 2 weeks later, they were married in the small church in Silverdale. Mary served as flower girl, scattering wildflower petals with solemn dedication. The ranch hands stood as witnesses, grinning and elbowing each other as Vincent kissed his bride. "You may now kiss the bride," the preacher had barely finished saying before Vincent swept Nora into his arms. The kiss was restrained, mindful of their audience, but the promise in his eyes made Nora blush to the roots of her hair. That evening, after a celebration at the ranch, and after Mary had been tucked into bed in the main house for the first time, Vincent led Nora to the master bedroom. "I had this made for you," he said, presenting her with a small wooden box. Inside, Nora found a silver-handled hairbrush and matching mirror. "Vincent, they're beautiful." "I remember how you almost sacrificed your hair," he said softly, running his fingers through the long auburn strands. "I want you to know how much I treasure it, how much I treasure all of you." Tears pricked her eyes as she set the gifts aside and turned into his embrace. "Show me," she whispered against his lips. Later, lying in his arms, Nora traced the scar that ran along his ribs. "How did you get this?" Vincent's hand continued its gentle stroking of her hair. "Apache raid back when I first started ranching. Nearly died." Nora pressed a kiss to the scar. "I'm glad you didn't," he chuckled, the sound rumbling through his chest beneath her ear. "So am I, especially now." Spring blossomed into summer, and summer faded into fall. Nora sold her homestead to a newly arrived family from back east, using the money to invest in breeding stock for the ranch. Mary started school in Silverdale, riding in with Vincent or one of the hands when they went to town. Life settled into a pattern of work and love, challenges and joys. Nora never forgot the desperate woman she'd been, willing to trade her hair for bread, but that memory made the present all the sweeter. On a crisp October evening, a year after they'd met, Nora and Vincent sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the western sky in shades of gold and crimson. Mary was inside, practicing her letters under the watchful eye of Mrs. Garcia, who now served as the ranch's cook. "I have something to tell you," Nora said, taking Vincent's hand and placing it on her stomach. His eyes widened, then filled with a joy so pure it made her breath catch. "Are you certain?" She nodded, smiling through happy tears. "Dr. Miller confirmed it yesterday. Come spring, Mary will have a little brother or sister." Vincent pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. "I never thought I could be this happy," he murmured. "Nor I," Nora admitted, leaning into his strength. "After Thomas died, I thought that part of my life was over. And now—" She looked up at him, this man who had seen her at her most desperate and found not someone to pity, but someone to love. "Now I know it was just beginning." Their child, a son they named James Thomas Durand, was born the following April, with Mary serving as a proud and very official 5-year-old assistant to the midwife. "He has your eyes," Nora told Vincent as he held his son for the first time, his expression a mixture of awe and terror. "Poor kid," Vincent joked, but his voice was thick with emotion. As James grew, so did the ranch. Vincent and Nora worked side by side, expanding their operation to include not just cattle but horses as well. Nora's head for business complemented Vincent's knowledge of ranching, and together they built a prosperity neither had imagined possible. 2 years after James was born, they welcomed a daughter, Elizabeth. Mary, now 7, took her role as oldest sibling very seriously, reading to her younger siblings and teaching James to identify various animals and plants around the ranch. On the 5th anniversary of their meeting, Vincent presented Nora with a deed. "What's this?" she asked, unfolding the paper. "The Rocking V Ranch," he said proudly. "Officially registered with your name alongside mine. Equal partners, just as we've always been." Nora looked from the deed to her husband's face, seeing in it the same strength and kindness that had first drawn her to him. "Thank you," she said softly. That night after the children were asleep, Vincent and Nora sat by the fire, his arm around her shoulders, her head resting against him. "Do you ever think about that day?" he asked. "The day we met," Nora nodded. "Often. I was so desperate, so afraid. And now—" She smiled, looking around at the home they'd built together, thinking of their children sleeping peacefully upstairs. "Now I know that what I thought was the end was really just the beginning. You told me to keep my hair, that you'd feed us both. Instead, you gave us a home, a family, a future." Vincent kissed her temple. "You gave me the same, Nora. Before you, this was just a ranch. You made it a home." Outside, the Colorado wind blew across the plains. But inside, wrapped in each other's arms, Nora and Vincent were sheltered by something stronger than walls, the love they'd built from the most unlikely of beginnings. When a desperate widow tried to trade her hair for bread, and a cowboy offered her so much more.